Alright, my friends, you know the drill. Been doing this less and less lately, I feel like, but sit back and prepare to enjoy a sampling of what the Netrunner meta looks like today, 05/23 of 2021. Don't like your game being streamed here, just let me know. Add your name to a list and will not do so in the future. Otherwise, first game of the night is Hoshko versus Mirrormorph. Sporting the new Buzzsaw, hack and slash breakers. Fun breakers. I think wisely they didn't print one for a barrier. I don't think they printed one for a barrier, did they? No, wait, there's Cleaver, right? Well, whatever. They're missing one, right? Because Mimic, he's kind of already that. There aren't very many sentries that end the run, are there? So theoretically you can crash through them. Only reason I bring that up is because Mimic can't be boosted, unlike the other two, which can technically be boosted just for a very expensive amount of money. Anyway, it looks like the Maryland campaign is currently running on the side of Mirrormorph. Wildcat Strike used. Draws 4 cards for the runner. We have an interesting new interface. Yeah, okay, so a friend of mine, Lepsis, and I were talking about Wildcat Strike, and he said, because again, I have not yet done a full analysis of this card, and I really should, but he said that Wildcat Strike, let me see if we can find it here. Here we go. That he had read that the conclusion was you always give the runner the money. And as a general rule, while I understand the sentiment behind that, and I sort of agree with it, and keep in mind these are not his direct words, he was relaying what he had read himself. But I feel that that's just erroneous. And here we saw the court gave the runner the draw here from Wildcat Strike, and I agree with that because they had no money. And I feel like if the runner has no money, give them the draw. What are they going to do with it? Now in this case they did mosh, but it's still not a super ideal scenario. Yeah, they got a bunch of cards, but they're down to 1 credit. Now admittedly, if they drew a bunch of bin breakers, you know, the draw would still help them. But I feel like, sure, in general, give the runner the money, that's fine. But look at the situation. If the runner has no money, give them the draw. If the runner has no cards, give them the money. Hoshko flips over to introvert mode. Looks like Keiko was able to be installed. That'll be nice once some companions hit the table, but until then, Keiko is a very expensive... Oh, well, I shouldn't say that. Keiko gives you +2 memory. I thought it was just +1. Well, a not terribly expensive 2 memory. She doesn't need this memory. Looks like the people down at Nisei gave us a new interface here. This is nifty. Kind of makes seeing the statistics a little bit easier. A little symbol for MU, clicks, credits, link. Spaced out a little more condensed. I like that. Anyway, Trickster Taka lost due to it having too many credits. It passes over to the Corp. Stalls out a little bit on their turn. Presumably they'll be using subliminal messaging at the beginning of their turn. They have a Brawn already rezzed, protecting R&D. Looks like they had to disconnect and rejoin. Hopefully they'll be able to participate again. Subliminal messaging indeed coming back to the hand of the Corp. That'll be a free credit. They're sitting at 8 with a Brawn already rezzed this early in the game. What turn are we on? Just turn 4. So not too bad, really. Maryland campaign starting to help with that. Otherwise, where did they get this money? Start out with 5. We don't see anything in the bin. Wonder if it was just subliminal messaging money? See if we can take a quick look. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Turn 1 subliminal messaging was used in combination with Mirror Morph potentially gaining an extra credit each turn. I'm sure that allowed them to get the extra money for Brawn and still be able to sit as they are now at 9 credits. Presumably Mirror Morph going to do everything they can to take 3 unique actions, but subliminal messaging really helps with that, since it counts as playing an operation, which is a unique action, as long as the second operation isn't played. But it's clickless, so in a sense you really only have to take 2 more unique operations after that. And then you've got 2 clicks afterwards to play around with. Double advance on the card in server 2. The runner decides to check that, sees that it's a clearinghouse. Surprising. I would have assumed that that was an NGO front and would not have checked it, but it does end up being something pseudo-relevant. But with 3 credits needed to trash it, Hushko can't really do anything about it. However, this is going to trigger her ID ability, so she will gain 2 credits in addition to drawing a card and losing a credit on the next turn. She double clicks for credits. Is she going to go back in for the clearinghouse? Clearinghouse can't flatline Hushko on the next turn. It's a little scary because the Corp could ice up server 2 on the rebound, preventing Hushko from getting in there on the following turn. But no, she's going to install daily casts. And I think that's perfectly acceptable. A lot of the time, HB ice can be clicked through. Plus, the Corp would have to spend another click and a credit advancing this. Oh, I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought it dealt 2 me damage per advancement token. No. So even if the Corp triple advances this, they'll have no clicks left to ice up server 2. Although they are Mirror Morph, so they get fancy things. Looks like they decided to Mirror Morph for an extra credit. Regardless, the point is, it would be difficult to advance Clearinghouse to a dangerous position while also protecting it. Now, it does have 3 advancement tokens. Of course, Hushko is kind of incentivized to still clear that out. I mean, why not? The Corp has spent 3 clicks and 3 credits at this point investing in Clearinghouse. Hushko might as well run it, spend the 3 to just get rid of it. Runs the card in server 3 that was just installed last turn. Turns out to be a snare. Hushko losing out on the cards in her hand, DreamNet, Keiko, and Afterimage. The extra copy of Keiko, not a big deal, but Afterimage and DreamNet, a little frustrating. Surprised DreamNet wasn't installed previously, since she was going to be running anyway. Could have triggered the credit gain and the card draw, but didn't do so. Corp admitting that the splash into Afterimage is interesting, and I would have to agree. Afterimage typically used in stealth decks, but with Trickster Taka potentially entering play, you do have the potential of using Afterimage's stealth abilities. However, Trickster Taka has already left the field, in addition to another copy having been removed from Gachapon. Really only leaves one more copy of Taka swimming around somewhere out there to be installed. Oh, I'm sorry. It was actually the runner who said interesting splashes, and they were referring more than likely to Clearinghouse and Snare. Which is also true. That's 5 influence spent. Mirror Morph does have the standard 15, but 5 influence spent on 2 cards from 2 different factions that basically involve dealing damage. A Mirror Morph with 2 splashes that injure the runner. Now the Clearinghouse makes a certain amount of sense. You can advance that, and that may count as your unique action for Mirror Morph, but Mirror Morph typically gets around that by using cards like... Now I can never remember the names, but they're the cards where it says click for 2 credits, or click for 2 draw, or I think there's another one that says click to install or something like that. They're the ones that when trashed also trigger their card text. Mirror Morph decides to install a card in server 4 and double clicks for 2 credits. No, that sound effect was Hoshko clicking up for 2 credits and then playing Wildcat. Corp decides to give the runner 2... Sorry, decides to give the runner the 6 credits. Again, I might have been tempted to just give them the draw, but they're down to 2 cards. I don't know. I think either choice in that situation was fine. Still, I might have been really tempted to give them the draw on that. They were down to so low on credits and they needed to shake that tag anyway. It would have been funny to see them drop 2 credits and get a bunch of cards and not be able to shake the tag. Regardless, piece of ice is put in front of server 4, protecting the double advance card. Hoshko runs click 1 and wants to see what that is. It's just a magnet though. Since none of the Botuluses in Hoshko's deck have been installed, magnet not going to be super relevant yet. Could potentially be relevant if there's another magnet and another Botulus installed. However, double advance card is a Cerebral Overrider, and this is quite a tricky Mirror Morph deck. Project Vatron was stolen at some point, so there are 3 agenda points on the table for Hoshko, but Mirror Morph's been doing just a fine job of being tricksy and trappy. Hoshko gonna have to run around with a hand size of 3 at this point, potentially making Clearinghouse that much easier to flatline. New card goes behind Magnet and is double advanced. Now the thing is, Buzzsaw, a little expensive to install at 4, does break Magnet for just a single credit, sitting there at that 3 strength. So not really a big deal for Hoshko to get in here, just a single credit tax. She has 4 after getting in, sees the Clearinghouse behind the Magnet, goes ahead and pays the 3 to trash. That makes sense. Mirror Morph potentially looking for the flatline there. Hoshko decides to install Paladin Poemu. It's going to be a very powerful economy card for her, not only gaining a credit a turn that can be used to install things, but also theoretically triggering Keiko's credit generation once a turn. Now Mirror Morph is playing an interesting game here. Very wily for an HB deck. Cerebral Overrider, of course, is playing in the home turf of HB, but the snares of Clearinghouses gonna make things a little more non-standard for Hoshko, but HB needs some other piece of ice here in front of server 4 to really make running into this server annoying. Otherwise, Hoshko is just being taxed a single credit anytime she wants to check what card or potential trap the Mirror Morph is installing, although because Mirror Morph has shown that they are willing to use Cerebral Overrider, it's going to make checking advanced cards a little more stressful for Hoshko. However, Mirror Morph M does install the Nanoteching Matrix, clicks for 2 credits. Between that and subliminal messaging, it's going to be a lot easier to trigger their ID ability, although as long as Hoshko keeps running, subliminal messaging can't be used. Fencer Fueno enters the scene, not a companion you often see, but a companion nonetheless. Is fairly, I think, undervalued. I think you can run a single copy of Fencer Fueno in practically any deck, and chances are it will be useful. Now, the wording on it is a little strange. It says, whenever you make a successful run, you may spend hosted credits for the remainder of that run. It's a little weird. Mostly, though, what that means is you can use the credits on Fencer Fueno to trash things. Now, theoretically, if there was, say, a controlling the message trace, you could also use the credits on the trace. Or if there was some other method of spending money after the run is successful, of course you can spend those credits. But really, you just use Fueno's credits to just trash things. And I don't know a single runner game that you play where you're not trashing something by spending credits. And at a 0 install cost, I mean, Fueno very quickly pays for itself. Botchless enters play on top of the Brawn. 2 tokens placed on that. I guess we're going to click through that last subroutine. Looks like, yeah, okay. So the 2 virus tokens ditched to break the end of the runs, and a click through to prevent the installation of a card. Oh, it looks like it's limited to a piece of ice from HQ or archives. Seize the top card of R&D, nothing useful. Mutual Favor, though, going to pull out the last icebreaker needed, the after image. Hoshko already down to her last Botchless, and with no simul chips revealed so far, looks like the only way we're going to get these Botchleses back is through buffer drive. No, we're going to undo the click. Mutual Favor going to be used for something else, or perhaps the Paladin Poemu credits. Yeah, there we go. Going to use the Paladin Poemu credits on that. Okay, so the killer has entered the stage. The real problem is that it cannot be boosted currently because there are no stealth cards on the table. In general, it's looking somewhat better for Mirror Morph than it is for Hoshko. Hoshko, of course, has those 3 points, but Mirror Morph is in a commanding position with 16 credits. And looking at a Hoshko that is kind of low on dangerous tricks. Again, those Botchleses are gone. There's no Trickster Taka. There's no leeches. There was a leech that was pitched with a Gachapon. Another leech that's in the trash for some reason. Okay, so the Ice Carver is installed, which is good, because we saw this other Ice Carver pitched from the snare damage lot of times you only run one copy of Ice Carver, but apparently this Hoshko runs two, so that's going to help lower the strength of things that need to be braked with After Image or Buzzsaw. Decides to go ahead and check R&D again. Clicks twice and spends a virus counter to ensure no subroutines fire. Swing and miss, though. Now, Mirrormorph has a lot of money, and you might be thinking, well, they're in a good position now to use their ice, right? But the problem is, they actually use quite a few tricks here, so they don't have as many slots for ice. You gotta think, Cerebral Overrider, Clearinghouse, Snare. All of these are non-standard cards, which means those are slots not filled up with ice. However, they did have another piece of ice in their 6 cards in HQ. Does reinforce R&D with it, and at some point overwrote their magnet that was protecting server 4, realizing that Buzzsaw just breaks it for a single credit. It's just not worth it. Second piece of ice in front of server 4. Sprint was used, theoretically, to shuffle maybe some agendas into R&D. If Mirrormorph can get some kind of second Cerebral to hit, or if they can fake out an agenda that's actually a clearinghouse, they could potentially flatline Hoshko. But it's going to depend on how Hoshko responds. That being said, she's only down to a single credit, which means Mirrormorph might just be able to get away with it regardless of what Hoshko does if they have a proper scoring window. In this case, the scoring window would just be used for a kill window. The third Gachapon installed and immediately used. Potentially looking for maybe another copy of Trickster Taka, the third one. Pushko has a lot of the pieces she needs. Kind of still missing the Dream Net, missing maybe a leech or two. This is odd. Looks like we're going to install the Stargate. Okay. But I don't think she can get through here. I don't know. With that second piece of ice on R&D, with both other Botuluses in the bin, is Stargate really the way to go? Yeah, she got rid of the Dream Net. She got rid of Buzzsaw. That makes sense. Don't need another copy of that. But can't you use Gachapon to install virtual resources? Yeah. I'd be tempted to install the Dream Net. I don't think that Stargate's going to do much. The problem is, she's probably going to wait for Botulus to tick up a little bit. You know, next turn she can get through it, through the Brawn for a single click. But the Corp is now going to get a full turn to respond to this. They have plenty of money. If they really want to, and they have a third piece of ice, they can probably just put it in front of R&D. Instead, they overwrite their nanoteching matrix, putting a new card in server 4 and double advancing it. And I think this is a wise decision from Mirrormorph. Mirrormorph is basically saying, okay, fine, go ahead, Stargate me. I don't care. It's not going to be easy for you to get in to R&D anyway. Chances are, even if you get in, it's going to take your entire turn to do so, and I'm gonna give you 2 targets that you have to worry about. Because this double advance card could be an agenda, it could be a cerebral overrider, it could be a clearinghouse, could even be an NGO front, although we haven't seen any of those yet. Hoshko, click 1, runs server 4. The corp is going to need to take a moment to go AFK. So I have to wait and see when they come back, the exciting conclusion to this. But realistically here, what are we looking at? We're looking at a fully loaded Flano. So if there's something back here with a trash cost, Hoshko is going to be able to trash it, which is cool. That's one of the things you can do with Flano. Even when it gets 3 credits, you can start giving Flano money. The only thing you have to do to keep it to stick around is you have to lose a credit. But Flano gains a credit anyway, so you're kind of just putting it on Flano. As long as you trash something with the money on Flano, you're not actually losing the money. So if this is a clearinghouse back here, Hoshko is going to be able to trash it for free. I believe clearinghouse costs 3 credits to trash. But the real issue that I see here is she has no money, just straight up no money to get through here. We already know that the cards here in server 4 are not magnets, or rather it would be logical to assume that they are not magnets, since Miramorph was willing to overwrite their rezzed magnet in order to install these 2 pieces of ice. So it's not likely that a magnet that was broken by Buzzsaw for a single credit was replaced by another code gate that Buzzsaw can break for a single credit. What I'm imagining is going to happen here is this outermost piece of ice is going to res, and Hoshko is just going to crash off of it. And it's not going to set the corp back at all because they're at 18 credits. Okay, so it is a porous piece of ice. It's an engram flush. The first time you run through engram flush, it's kind of a freebie because the corp doesn't really know what you have in hand. Corp names resource. Yeah, given what you've seen in this deck, you probably wouldn't name event. I'm a big fan of naming event. If you don't know what's in the runner's hand, name event. I still think I would have named event here, but fine. If you want to name resource, name resource. Hoshko basically just has to let this fire, so we're going to see what's in her hand. Assuming, of course, that she progresses through the menu. Come on. Okay, so we see Keiko, Rejig, and Paladin Poemu. And yeah, not a big deal, but I think I just would have rather trashed the Rejig, you know? If you name event, you would have gotten that. Paladin Poemu at this point is just a duplicate card. Anyway, gets through the engram flush because it is porous. Oh. But it's an Eli, which means Hoshko can just click through this. Could be that that's what the corp wants. We'll have to wait and see. But Eli, a single Eli is, don't get me wrong, it's good. But an engram flush and an Eli is not going to consistently keep Hoshko out of this server. So she does get into server 4 and sees a clearinghouse. Going to be able to, again, trash that for free with Flano credits. And that was probably the best Hoshko could have ever hoped for this situation. I cannot believe she was able to get in. But a first-time encounter on Engram Flush where the corp doesn't know what's in your hand. In addition to an Eli, which can be clicked through. Yeah, I mean, that clearinghouse is hers. Did all of that with 0 credits. Just had to pitch a duplicate copy of Paladin Poemu. Of course, lose the 3 clicks total from the run. I think you're willing to do that, especially when the corp installed double advance the clearinghouse. That spent their whole turn to do that. And here we go. This might be the linchpin. 3rd piece of ice on server 4. Another clearinghouse trick. Going to be that much more difficult. Even if this ice is just a 2nd copy of Eli, Hoshko can no longer just click through this server. Now, where did Hoshko get this money from? Oh, of course, 1 credit was actually generated by Fueno from Keiko, or vice versa. Where did all this money come from? She began the last turn with a single credit. Gained a credit from Keiko. Spent 3 clicks on the run. And the 4th click was a draw. How did she get the extra 2 credits? Where did those come from? Oh, I think she was in dormant mode and gained 2 credits from her ID. That's probably what happened. Yeah, there it is. But she's going to lose a credit on her next turn. She's going to begin the next turn with 3 credits. And Kurodra can break an Eli for 4 credits, right? So I guess theoretically, if it is a 2nd copy of Eli, she potentially is going to have the money to break through it because Ice Carver is going to lower the strength of Eli by 1. You can just crash into the Engram Flush. No need to break that. Although, if you can somehow lower the strength of Engram Flush, it's a single credit for Buzzsaw to bust through. No leeches, though, so no real ability to do that. Potentially could test the waters on R&D. Of course, I'm talking like she needs to run into server 4 this turn. She doesn't. So indeed, going to Stargate into R&D. Another Engram Flush. She really needs a leech. Unfortunately, there's kind of like Trickster Taka. There's only 1 more potential copy of it in her deck. With only 5 cards left and 4 cards in hand, I don't know where that is. Engram Flush fires and is naming hardware. Why would you ever name hardware? I mean, I guess you're aiming for the Keiko. But you already know, if you're just trying to deal net damage, you already know the rejig is in hand. Why not name event? But to be fair, there was 1 of every kind of card in Keiko's, Hoshko's hand, so it really doesn't matter what was named. Hardware is just an odd one. If you're just trying to do straight up net damage, I feel like you would just name event. There's a much better chance, unless you're fighting an Az or something, or your opponent is running Boomerang. I feel like hardware is you have less of a chance of that hitting 2 cards. Anyway, because Engram Flush is porous, R&D is able to be broken into. Strangely, Hoshko only uses... Well, I shouldn't even say strangely. Hoshko uses 2 clicks to break 2 of Braun's subroutines and only uses 1 virus counter on Botulus. I think the reason for this is because she has the time right now to do this, because there's no cards pressuring her in Server 4. But what this opens up the potential to do is that next turn she can run this, and if need be, can completely break Braun clicklessly if she needs the extra click to do something else like check Server 4, or if Mirror Morph puts another piece of ice in front of R&D that she needs to click through because it's dangerous, like a second copy of Braun. Now she finally has this DreamNet installed, and what cards did we see from R&D? We saw Drafter, Red Level Clearance, and Eli. Red Level Clearance is the card targeted. But why? Why would you target Red Level Clearance? I feel like you would want to go after the ice, because now you know the Corp has 2 more pieces of ice. The ice is what's going to keep you from winning the game. And the Drafter had 3 strength, but it's lowered by 1. I would definitely go after Eli, because you can just break the Drafter with After Image. And now we actually have a Trickster Taka finally, the 3rd copy. Hoshko is now suddenly in a good spot. She decides to run HQ, but again, sees a Drafter, and because Drafter's strength is 2, she's fine to just pay a single credit to break this. Yeah, I really wish she had broken, or rather trashed, the Eli. Because one of these 2 pieces of ice is probably the Eli. I would imagine the Drafter would go in Archives. The Eli on R&D. However, gets into HQ and only sees another copy of Subliminal Messaging. Not really getting much useful information there. Much rather would have seen an agenda, a Cerebral Overrider, Clearinghouse even. Especially with the Fueno credits stacking up, you need to spend those. Potentially. Can you? Well, no, I don't think you can do that. I was thinking, when the run is successful, can you still spend money to boost your icebreakers? Because if you could, I guess you could get rid of Fencer Fueno credits that way. In fact, you could even trigger Keiko that way, gaining you a credit. I don't know, I'd have to look at the timing window on that to see if that's legal. Theoretically, though, that could be a way of generating a credit on each run. The Fueno-Keiko interaction. Anyway, it was up and down on both sides, but I'd have to say, because Mirror Morph hasn't gained any other forward momentum aside from installing a few pieces of ice and rezzing them, they haven't scored any agendas, haven't dealt any more brain damage. I suppose Keiko is down, or Hoshko is down to her last 6 cards, which is something. But as long as Hoshko doesn't run into another snare, or another Cerebral Overrider, There's a good chance. She has a decent chance here. Boomerang is played on the outermost piece of ice in front of R&D. It is just the drafter, which means the Eli presumably is installed in front of Archives. I find that to be an odd choice. I think you know that Hoshko is running through R&D several times. You would want the more taxing piece of ice to be put in front of R&D. However, the Corp didn't seem to realize Hoshko had the ice carver, so perhaps thought that the drafter would have been more dangerous because the afterimage would need a stealth card, a stealth credit rather, to boost. I'm not sure why, but Hoshko decides to spend Trickster Taka money to break Drafter instead of using the Boomerang. I think you would want to use the Boomerang so that you could shuffle it back into your stack, potentially draw it, and use it on a more useful piece of ice. Even a piece of ice like Eli. Because again, these drafters are being broken for a single credit. Anyway, Botulus is going to give free passage into R&D. The Stargate run sees... Oh, nice! Project Vacheron, send a message. Send a message? Oh, that's an agenda. And Snare. I'd be very tempted to go after the Snare. Because the Snare is what's scary. Although, you could just say, fine, I'll take the 3 net damage. Give me one of those agendas, because all I need now is just another agenda. It's a tough choice. She's got 2 more clicks after this. So theoretically, if she wants Engram Flush to fire again, she could trash an agenda into Archives and run R&D again to steal whatever agenda she left behind. Well, no, because the Snare was in between them, wasn't it? Well, no, so yeah, you trash... No, the Snare was at the bottom, so it doesn't matter which one you trash. Trash the send a message, go back in, steal the Project Vacheron, then all you have to do is get into Archives and wait a couple turns for the Vacheron tokens to be removed, and you win the game. Decides not to do that, though. Trashes the Snare. I think... I mean, any of those are good trashes. Trashing the Snare is fine. It's definitely a choice. But I think the win was in sight. Because you're breaking the drafter for a credit. You let Engram Flush fire. You say, fine, deal damage to me, I don't care. Steal the Vacheron. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, because what you do is you spend your extra click breaking the end of run, the Botulus token breaking the end of run, and then you just say, go ahead, install the piece of ice in front of this server, because I don't... Oh, but it can be installed from Archives. Oh, but it would just be the magnet if it was from Archives, because we don't have a good reason to think that they have ice in HQ. I feel like if they did, they would have installed it, because especially given that they've installed several pieces of ice in the last couple turns. I don't know. It's a gamble either way. Trashing the Snare is the safer option, and that's perfectly fine. Corp decides to triple advance the card in server 4. If it's an agenda, Hoshko really isn't terribly pressured regarding it, simply because the Corp has 0 agenda points, and indeed goes into HQ and steals the Vacheron that presumably the Corp had drawn on their last turn. Since I don't believe Stargate shuffles. Yeah, there's no shuffling that happens after Stargate is used. Now, funnily enough, we're getting a very similar scenario that we were talking about, where Hoshko could potentially trash one of the agendas and then go in there for the second one. Instead, she's doing it on the next turn where she got into HQ, had the 1 in 3 chance to get the Vatron. Now is going back into R&D, only this time there's an extra token on Botulus in addition to her having an extra click in this run, meaning that Engram Flush is really the only thing that's doing anything relevant here. She's just going to be able to spend the Botulus tokens and the clicks to get through Brawn. Engram Flush names event. The Corp already knows what's in Hoshko's hand. Rejigs, Stargate, probably something else. Without a leech, Hoshko doesn't have much of an option to break this. Nope. Does go ahead and breaks it. Spends the Trickster Taka money. Apparently wants to keep at least 3 cards in her hand for the potential third snare. But she knows that this card here in R&D isn't a snare. And the Corp is down to 0 points. She could almost just sit here and click for credits for the next 3 turns and maybe even win. But she has 6 credits coming off daily cast. So again, this is the wiser choice, the less reckless choice. And because she has all of these turns, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it matters. I think Hoshko's got this because I think she just does not run any card that isn't advanced. Because if it isn't advanced, it could be the third snare. But it's not going to matter because she has the 3 cards in hand anyway, so she can survive 1 snare. She can survive a triple advanced Cerebral Overrider. And the fact that the Corp just drew a card and clicked for a credit kind of signifies that this card in Server 4 is just another Cerebral Overrider. But it could be a clearinghouse. And that's kind of the tough situation right now. There are no clearinghouses in archives. There are 2 snares, but no clearinghouses. So, how many Cerebral Overriders? There's 1 Cerebral Overrider. It's the game almost comes down to a 50-50 chance here. So this outermost Brawn that was rezzed for free using the trigger off of Send a Message can just be clicked through. Engram Flush, I guess, can be broken through if Hoshko wants to spend the 4 credits to do that. Eli can be broken for 3 credits. And again, Trickster Taka is helping all of this out. But if this is a Cerebral Overrider, she dies. If it's a clearinghouse and she doesn't run it, she dies. Personally, I'm in favor of just not running. Except that it's very likely that it's a clearinghouse. I think that's the problem. There's a really good chance this is a clearinghouse because there's none in the bin. We know that Archive Memories was probably used to pull clearinghouse back out of archives. Let's just do a real quick check. Yeah, Archive Memories is consistently being used to add clearinghouse to HQ. since the corp has not been using any recursion. It really is just a 50-50 scenario. Like, we have good reason to think. We have good reason to think that it is a clearinghouse. Oh my goodness. Wait, what? Guys, it is a clearinghouse. There's some kind of visual bug. Oh my goodness, do you see this? I don't think that worked. But I think for some reason by typing in the name it's almost popping up here on the card. I don't know if that means it's a clearinghouse or not. Anyway. Well, to see, because Hoshko is running this. Engram Flush gets to fire, and the card in server 4 was the clearinghouse. I wonder if that's a spectator-only bug, or if that can be used when you're actually playing. Hedge fund on the corpse turn puts them up to 9. This is a massive delay here. I guess the corp is kind of just not sure how to win. Perhaps that's what's going on. If that is their only copy of Clearinghouse, I suppose it could be a bit of a stickler, but with the 2 snares in Clearinghouse, that's only 7 influence. They have another 7 influence unaccounted for. They overwrite the engram flush on R&D and install a 3rd piece of ice in front of their drafter. I might even go so far as to overwrite the drafter itself. Because if Hoshko uses Boomerang, she can potentially put it into her stack and draw it again, putting her back up to 3 cards. And the drafter is only serving as a single credit tax. Hoshko just clicks up for 4 credits. She's just waiting for the Vacheron credit tokens to disappear. Mirrormorph needs to win, needs to do something in the next 2 turns. Installs a card in server 4. No, see, nothing happens from it though. It's not advanced. This just feels like the third copy of Snare. Hoshka doesn't have to run this. The Corp isn't threatening anything, even if it's an agenda, even if it's somehow a 3-2. It doesn't matter. Hoshka wins on the next turn. Yeah. Oh, wait, what? Oh, it's a luminal transubstantiation. Okay, but still, again, it's the same thing as before. Just because the agenda was scored doesn't really mean anything. Corp gets 3 clicks to do something, but they're not really going to be able to do anything with these 3 clicks that wins in the game. They're just kind of stalling at this point. They needed to win with a clearinghouse. They needed to threaten the cerebral overrider victory, but they weren't able to. And so Hoshko at that point had worked her way through Miramor's tricks and could just sit back and let the clock on the game run out. Interesting Miramorph deck. Kind of fun. Clearinghouse victory is not completely unobtainable, but I feel like it relies on either landing a cerebral overrider or landing a surprise snare while you have an advanced clearinghouse already on the table. In spite of the fact that it seemed like it took Hoshko a little while to set up here, I could see the logic behind this suite. The buzzsaw is pretty good, as long as you're not facing high-strength code gates, and to my knowledge, high-strength code gates aren't really popular these days. I feel like Fairchild 3.0 is kind of the highest one you run into, or potentially, Toll Booth? And those are both strength 5, I believe. With Ice Carver and a Leech with a single token, you can get through those. The After Image, similarly, is extremely efficient at breaking sentries, as long as it doesn't need to be boosted. Well, it's still efficient, even if it needs to be boosted. It's just that you rely completely on the Trickster Taka credits to do that. But Taka's probably generating enough money to get by. Crowder's pretty standard. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's the problem kind of with Trixie decks. Once you run out of tricks, even if you were in a good position at the beginning of the game, you just can't win. You always need a backup plan. It's something I've learned developing Trixie Jinteki decks. You can't just lean into one trick, you have to have 7. And they all have to synergize, and they all have to threaten a different win condition. Because otherwise, if the runner gets through your one big trick, then you can't really do anything. Anyway, Combination Wu versus Built to Last. Triple advance, piece of ice in front of HQ. Perhaps Space Ice, or perhaps even just 7 Wonder Ice, and Wayland really wants its secondary effect for some reason. Wu has a Flameout, Rizeki, an interesting Artid daily cast. Scores an Above the Law using a Biotic Labor. Trashes, oh nice, Biotic labors and above the law, and trashes the fully loaded daily cast from Wu. That's a good move. Artist colony. What? Artist colony? Forfeit an agenda, search your stack for a card and install it. Paying the install cost. But you have to forfeit an agenda to do that. We'll have to see how that wants to be used. Seems like a card that you would want to use in tandem with Fansite. There are no Fansites on the table right now. A Reaver? What? First time you trash an installed card each turn, draw a card. Okay, so it does synergize with SMC because SMC is trashed. So I think what happened is she wooed the SMC. No. No, just drew it apparently. Installed it on Flameout. Used the Flameout money to fire SMC, triggering Reaver, and installs a second copy of Rizeki. So she's got good drip econ coming in, and any trash effects are going to draw her a card. But what is going on with this deck? I haven't really seen a Shaper deck quite like this one. Meanwhile, the Corp is still just kind of setting up. Has another piece of ice in front of R&D and upgrade on HQ, which maybe is a Chrysium Grid? It's generally the most frequent upgrade coming out of Wayland, but if it was a Chrysium Grid, you'd think you'd put it on R&D against Shaper. So maybe it's not a Chrysium. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, 2 cards in Naked Remotes, 3 cards in Naked Remotes from Wayland. A set of moves in response to Wu throwing down second copy of Daily Cast. This time, she will hopefully, for her sake, be getting that money. Uses falsified credentials to look at one of the cards. In server 3, guesses asset. It is an asset. She gains the money from it. Wall-to-wall res. All 3 abilities on that will get to fire, since there are no other resed assets on the table. However, through the use of Red Planet Couriers, Project Atlas is scored with 2 extra tokens. And I think, as interesting as Wu's deck is right now, I think she's just going to lose because it's taking her way too long to set up, which is per the norm with Shaper. You can have all these fancy tricks and neat engines, but if it takes too long to set up, there's not a lot of good that comes from it. If I had to guess, you can see here spec work, trashes an installed program. I think the idea is to get synergy off of Reaver when you trash cards with spec work, when you use your SMC. When Flameout is used, you have to trash Flameout. No, you don't trash Flameout, but you do trash the hosted program. The Artist Colony really has me scratching my head, though. She comes in here with a Kushik, names a 2. That's going to see her 5 cards. One of them in R&D is a global food. Goes ahead and steals that. Drops a Harbinger. This seems almost like a Aesop's deck. with the Harbinger here. You can spec work Harbinger, but typically spec work into Harbinger isn't enough on its own to include Harbinger. Well, I'd just have to see. Meanwhile, Wayland putting more advancement tokens on ice, protects wall-to-wall, mass commercializes for a low amount of money, but right now they don't really need that much more money. Even though mass commercialization there only got them a net of 3 credits, since it costs, what, a credit to play? No, it doesn't. So it did give them 4 credits, of course, a click spent to use it, but they don't need a ton of money. They just need to score their last agenda. A 3-pointer, theoretically. Or 2 2-pointers. Or Hostile Takeover and a 2-pointer. If they run Hostile Takeover in their deck, then all they need to do is pull it out with the Atlas. Yeah, it's not looking good for Wu. Wu decides to run in and trash the wall-to-wall. She has the money to do so. The card in front of server 3, the ice in front of server 3, not res. That's likely because right now, Wayland just needs money. They don't really need to protect their wall-to-wall. They just need the money to use a form of fast advance. And they either need to draw the fast advance, or they need to draw the agenda. It doesn't matter which one, because once they draw either or, they can use the Atlas token to draw whichever card they're missing. We've already seen that they use Biotic Labor. Somehow that Biotic Labor got shuffled back into R&D, and it looks like that came from Spin Doctor. Install a piece of ice in front of archives and advance it. After having advanced the card in front of server 3, putting them up to 8 credits since those 2 pieces of ice did not have an advancement token on them previously. So mass commercialization is now live. Gonna give them 8 credits if they happen to have one. But yeah, we know the Biotic Labor is on R&D. They can pull that out whenever they want to. You have to assume they're just waiting. They're waiting to draw an agenda or Biotic Labor. I can't imagine they're doing anything else here. They use Red Planet Courier. They might even be saving up to Red Planet Courier a 3-pointer. Maybe they don't even run Hostile Takeover. Simulchip enters play, followed by a DZMZ Optimizer. Actually, it looks like Simulchip was played last turn. Wu is spending all this time setting up, but it's just not going to work out for her. She needs to somehow score extremely fast, or she's just going to lose. She might have already lost here. Project Atlas was used to pull Biotic Labor from R&D. Biotic Labor used. Card installed in server 3. Red Planet Courier. Scoring an Atlas with 3 tokens. Okay. And if at this point there is a hostile takeover in R&D, or even just in HQ, Wu has lost. Because yes, the Corp only has 1 credit, but that's all they need, because the first time they advance the hostile takeover, they gain a credit. Now Wu does get into HQ and steals another Project Food, Global Food Initiative. Turns out the upgrade on HQ was just a Cyberdex virus suite. She runs back into HQ, sees a reconstruction contract, runs R&D, doesn't see anything, installs an Aesop's pawn shop, but the game is probably over because it passes back over to Wayland. And again, we're going to find out now if Wayland, yeah, indeed, uses hostile takeover. That's going to be game. Oh, wait, do we have a clot? Oh my goodness. Right, of course, there's a clot here. Completely missed the clot in archives. Simultrip trashes Harbinger, which draws her a card from Reaver. Harbinger gets turned face down here. Clot installed. Suddenly, the Corp can't win. Corp decides to advance the card in front of server 3. It's going to wait and see what Wu does here. Now, she has a Mayfly on top of Flameout. Chances are she's going to be able to get into any credit, or any server she wants to. 22 credits to her name. No res on the outermost piece of ice. And the hostile takeover in server 3 is immediately scored. And funnily enough, it now all makes sense. That Cyberdex virus suite, if that hadn't been trashed, the Corp would have just used the Cyberdex virus suite to sweep away the clot. Would have been able to win, but because it was trashed previously, Wu opened up the potential for her to win here. Kushik's into R&D. Axis's Spin Doctor trashes that, runs into HQ. Axis is a Whoredom. Now, the score is 5-6. Theoretically, Wu just needs to score a 2-pointer to win. Corp is going to need to figure out how they want to do this. Decides to advance 2 pieces of ice and Atlas's a mass commercialization. They've got 2 more Atlas tokens. So they're back up to 11 credits. They can now threaten a res, but their fast advance is still locked out due to that clot. They're right at the finish line, but they can't cross. And they're either going to need to somehow use another Cyberdeck suite. Oh no, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What's happening here? Wu is running archives. If she hits archives, the clot is going to... Okay. The clot is gone. That might have been a mistake. No? Runs R&D. Okay. What is this? Is this an Apocalypse run? Runs R&D, no res. No, it can't be an Apocalypse run. That was not nearly enough clicks left. Okay, but if there's another hostile takeover in R&D, the Corp just wins. There's no way that I'm seeing that she can recur a clot. Perhaps she's banking on the Corp only running the single copy of Hostile Takeover, which is quite possible. Judging by the pause from the Corp, I'd have to say that's true. But still, I have to assume that Wu running into archives and hitting that Cyberdex virus suite had to have been a mistake. Unless she's trying to bait something out. Something she knows that we don't. Because... I mean, yeah, couldn't... There are 2 Atlas tokens. Couldn't the Corp use Atlas to add an Atlas to their hand and then use some kind of fast advance to just score it out? If they have another fast advance in R&D, they could use it. So they use Atlas to add preemptive action into HQ. They advance an ice, and then preemptive action, Cyberdex Virus Suite, Mass Commercialization, and Spin Doctor into R&D. Well, wait a minute. Why? Do they not have another 3-2? Wouldn't you want to put the biotic labor into R&D? They must know something that I don't. What was so important that they had to spend... They spent their Atlas token to recur Cyberdex. That seems to be what they did. They didn't even have Cyberdex in hand. So either they don't... Oh man, there's a global food. That's pretty wild. Hold up here. So what's our agenda counts here? 3, 6, 9, 11, 13, 15, 16. So there's 3 more points unaccounted for? Even the runner admits that running archives was a mistake. But the Corp also didn't anticipate the simulchip being used the way it was. Anyway, just kind of, I suppose, an example of why fast advance when Clot enters the game becomes a whole different beast. Oh, hey, Alderane. I hope I'm saying that one right. I'm gonna go with Alderane. It's mirror. They have to calculate the bonus every turn. What, the hardware? I know that Smoke has a console named Mirror. Looks like the next game is Reality Plus versus Renee. Seen a lot of setup moving pretty quickly on both sides. Renee getting some money. Looks like an ace-up stack. 2 Gachapones installed. On the other side of the table, 3 servers already on the field by NBN. In addition to 4 pieces of ice, 3 on the centrals, 1 protecting server 3. Second Rashida is rezzed and used. NBN's got to be feeling pretty good about that one. Second piece of ice protecting server 3. Now there's a lot of a third piece of ice protecting server 3. Impressive. There's a lot of ice on the table, but the Corp does not have, unless these are all very cheap pieces of ice, does not have the money more than likely to res all of these. So Renee is going to get a chance here to kind of pick and choose. Magic rule in Netrunner, run where you don't want to run first. So presumably, if they want to contest the card in server 3, they should run R&D or HQ first. Server 4, I kind of get the feeling is a Spin Doctor. Can't really prove that, but that's my gut instinct. Oh, the Nihilist. Good to see noise. Not often that this card gets used. It's expensive. I think it's a fun card. I think out of the 3 cards, the Nihilist, Class Act, and the Artist, I feel like the Nihilist is the one that gets used the least. Ah, it turns out the card in server 3 was the Spin Doctor. Res to draw 2 and recurs both the Rashidas. So Nihilist already has 2 tokens on it due to Leech. Spin Doctor in server 3 is replaced immediately by a double advanced card. Corp down to 9 credits. Again, have to hope this ice can be res cheaply. Or maybe there's a single piece of ice here. A Lynch piece of ice that the Corp is expecting the runner not to be able to get through. Now for a guy playing a Renee deck, or gal, I have no clue. Our runner is not being terribly aggressive. So it really hasn't triggered Renee's ID ability. Renee does fire off the Nihilist. And the Corp chooses to trash the top card of R&D to prevent Renee from drawing 2 cards. I think that makes sense. Renee only had a couple cards in hand, and with 12 credits, denying him the card draw is probably more beneficial than preserving a single card from being trashed from R&D, especially if this card in server 4 does happen to be a second copy of Spin Doctor. You can just recur that if Renee decides to run archives. Now, Aesop's Pawn Shop was used to trash Leech, and the Simul chip is used to recur Leech, putting another token on the Nihilist. Sorry, another 2 tokens on the Nihilist. That's a clever way to get your Nihilist tokens recurring. Indeed, the card in server 4 is a second copy of Spin Doctor. However, through the use of Seamless Launch, Corp is able to score a re-education. Whoa, what happened here? Wild. Okay, so re-education was scored. Add any number of cards from HQ to the bottom of R&D and draw that number of cards. The runner randomly adds the same number of cards from his or her grip to the bottom of the stack if able. Oh, that's rude. Oh my goodness. That's a pretty rough combo. Okay, so the card in server 3 was double advanced at the beginning of this turn. Yeah, Alderane. I'd have to agree. I haven't seen this one yet. But good grief. As long as you had the Neurospike in hand, when you score re-education, and you had an extra click left over, you practically guarantee the flatline, forcing the runner to add exactly the number of cards you needed into their stack. Yeah, that's pretty strong. How do you prevent this? I guess you can't. Because Neurospike isn't a trace. Oh, that's disgusting. Yeah, I don't think there's a good way to stop this. If the corp has those pieces in hand, what do you do as the runner? Ugly. Oh well, that's fine. I haven't seen that dominating the meta yet. I wonder if it will in the future. Attacking re-education? Yeah, I think that's probably the only way. To be fair, that Renee was not being aggressive at all. So it might kind of, in a sense, be their fault that they lost that way. Oh, nice! Someone who's using Smartware Distributor. Okay, so we have a Reina Roja, of course increasing the res cost of ice by 1. Oh, wow. Ah, that hurts. So, a Mirror Morph, who was bold enough to play with Tyr, sees it tranquilized, which is very painful. I mean, yeah, Rain is increasing the cost of Tyr by a single credit, but that's not really the issue. The issue is that Tyr costs 10 to res. Having to re-res that is prohibitively expensive. Now, Mirror Morph does have Nanoteching Matrix. So they're going to be able to recur some of this money. In addition to a card behind server 3, which apparently was a Luminal Transubstantiation, uncontested by Reina on the previous turn due to her installation of Earthrise Smartware, among other things. Looks like she also drew up twice. On the next turn, though, Tyr is going to be unresed. Install it in server 3 in a double advance. We haven't seen enough of Mirror Morph's deck to know if this potentially could be an NGO front. Could also just be another agenda. If this is the same Mirror Morph deck we saw earlier, it could even be something like a Cerebral Overrider or Clearinghouse. Reina, knowing that her win condition is to put the corp into a chokehold where they can't res anything, they don't have any money, decides to contest the Nanoteching Matrix. Drops down to 0 credits to trash that, but that's going to really make it a lot more difficult for Mirror Morph, not only just to get the money, but also trigger their ID ability, since the Nanoteching Matrix counts as a unique action. Now the card in server 3 is triple advanced, which is wild. If it's a Clearinghouse and Reina drops below 5 cards in hand, theoretically Mirror Morph can just win. If it's a Cerebral Overrider, then Mirror Morph is going deep into the mind games, hoping that Reina runs this. I don't think Reina is going to bother with it, though. She's too suspicious. I mean, anytime the corp advances a card in a server 5 times and doesn't score it, it's automatically suspicious. Unless you're playing against an NBN that uses Beal. Oh no, she's going for it. Last click, she's going for it. I think this is a mistake to do this last click. She goes in, what's she gonna see? Oh my goodness. Oh, come on. She just GG's out. Aw, that's nonsense. You hit the cerebral and decide you're done. I mean, the game was kind of more or less over at that point. But that's fantastic. When's the last time you've seen a quintuple advanced cerebral overrider hit somebody? That's great. Even the runner thought it was clearinghouse. If it had been a clearinghouse, I mean, I think you just keep 5 cards in hand. I don't know, it's tough. It's almost like a 50-50 coin flip no matter what. If it's a clearinghouse, you die if they advance it beyond 5. But also, if it's a cerebral overrider, you die if it's beyond 5 and you access it. Clearinghouse better to stay at 4. Yeah, you could keep it at 4 and then double advance it. That's true. I think the thing is, as long as you're using both Cerebral Overrider and Clearinghouse, you can mind game it. I think without running some kind of brain damage protection, or it's not really meat damage protection, is there? Well, there's Guru Devinder. I think Guru Devinder might be the best card against this. Yeah, the problem with Clearinghouse is it doesn't trigger until the beginning of your next turn. Oh, wow. A lot of finished games at this hour. Now, it looks like a startup game using perhaps the newbie decks. I guess we'll watch this one. Europe, I think, is waking up at this hour. So, America's going to sleep, and all of those Netrunner players are quitting, but Europe is waking up. So, all of those players haven't quite logged on yet. So the Catalyst, the Syndicate, basically blank IDs, playing with basic core set cards, essentially. This probably won't be a super competitive game. It looks kind of like somebody teaching somebody else how to play. So we won't expect... we won't be too critical of the moves here. Regardless, we see a game that is at 3-2 agenda points. Orbital Superiority, 2 copies of those scored, followed by a Superconducting Hub, which means that our Corp friend has 2 extra cards that they can hold in hand. The runner decides to contest the card in server 1. Has their full... nope, not quite the full suite of breakers installed. Missing their decoder. But server 1 is only protected by 2 barriers, with 2 leech tokens. Cleaver is going to be able to get through them. Well, not quite brawn. It'll be an extra 2 credits to boost there. The runner has 20 credits, Corp has 18. Where did this money come from? Nico campaign, hedge fund, government subsidy, standard cards there. On the runner's side, this money's coming from Sure Gamble, Wildcat Strike, Red Team, Creative Commission. Creative Commission is quite strong, even a telework contract. Public Trail used. So the runner either has to pay 8 credits or take a tag. It's probably in their best interest to pay the 8 credits. Especially because, for the most part, the ice isn't terribly expensive to get through. The most expensive server right now is the remote. The runner really needs their code gate, or their decoder though. Looks like Unity is their decoder of choice, which is going to be very strong, considering the other 2 breakers are already on the table. With Leech, no, you don't even need Leech. Funhouse only has a strength of 4. Which means you can get through Funhouse for 2 credits. Runner is confused why the Corp used Public Trail on their last click. I would agree. At this point, the runner would just simply take the tag and shake it on their next turn. It'd be much better if instead you incentivize the runner to pay the 8. We're going to undo that click, and the Corp is going to do something else instead. These decks can run at 30 cards, but there's also an alternative startup deck that uses, I believe, 45. Do a quick card count to see which is which. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Plus 13 is 25. Plus 15. 40. Looks like they're running the 40 size variant. Jailbreak, jumping into HQ. Takes 2 tags to get through Funhouse. Hits a government subsidy, a public trail, and another Funhouse. How they access the 3rd card? It looks like from a Docklands pass. Okay, not too bad. So essentially for 2 clicks and 4 credits, plus the click to make the run, we get to see 3 cards in HQ. Not terrible. Especially because they're going to have to take that tag on encountering Funhouse anyway. Public Trail now used as the first click, coming out of the Corp. The runner understandably pays the 8. Kind of like an expensive economic warfare at that point. That costs you an extra 4 credits, but also loses the runner an extra 4 credits. Both sides had plenty of money to do that, though. So the Corp decides to spend their one of the last two clicks reinforcing HQ with a Diviner. Not a big fan of Diviner. Kind of ends the run on a less than 50-50 chance. because if it hits a 0 cost card, it does not end the run. However, in our situation, DZMZ Optimizer is lost. Not an odd numbered card, but the runner decides to jack out when hitting Clearinghouse. But why? Why not just make the run at that point? You've only lost a single card from Diviner. Yeah, I think in general, if you were going to make that run, knowing that the Funhouse was here, and you lose a single card from Diviner, you just keep going. The DZMZ Optimizer wasn't like a critical loss there. In addition to the fact that even if the Corp is somehow running Snare, which we have no indication that they are, you had enough cards in hand to survive. Regardless, the Corp puts a card behind the 3 ice in server 1. Smartware Distributor, both of them were clicked up on the last turn by the runner, so those are going to drip down for 3 turns. Finally, they find a second copy of Unity, can now start hammering R&D with their conduit, and this makes them very dangerous. Tithe really was never threatening here, it's just that the white space was keeping the runner out. Now though that Unity is here, white space can just be broken for 2 credits. Actually, it can really just be broken for 1, as long as the runner has more than 6 credits. Problem is, Tithe had to be broken by spending 2 credits, so there's going to be... It's in the runner's best interest to break both of these subroutines now. So essentially they're able to get into this server for 4 credits. Theoretically 3 credits if they can get to white space with 7 or more credits. We're getting into R&D and seeing a Regolith mining license, which is trash for 3. I think as the runner you didn't want to do that. Mostly because the Corp getting more money right now is kind of not a huge deal. I mean, you don't want the Corp to get more money, but if they want to install and use the Regolith mining license, they either have to do it in a naked remote, or they have to overwrite whatever cards here in server 1, or they have to reveal that the card in server 1 is actually an upgrade if they install the Regolith and Resid. I think at that point, that's fine, because the Corp already has so much money right now, in addition to most of their ice is already res. So the runner dropping down to a single credit just to trash the Regolith out of R&D and isn't able to run back in. I think all of those things added together means you just don't want to trash it. You want those 3 credits on the next turn so that you can make another conduit run on R&D. The problem is the Corp responded by installing a 3rd piece of ice in front of R&D, and they have plenty of money to Resid. Whoa, where'd all this money come from? How'd the... Wait, what? Oh, the penny shaver money. Okay. I completely disregarded the penny shaver money. So, the Corp penny shavers. So through it, and the 2 credits from Smartware Distributor, jumps up to 12 credits. Conduit runs. Sees a Karuna. Or I guess you should pronounce it a Karuna. But Carmen is going to be able to break that pretty easily, actually. Largely because Leech is able to lower its strength by 1. So Carmen just breaks that for 2. Tithe is going to be broken for 2. And White Space, only the first subroutine now needs broken. Good, good. The runner noticed this and allows the second subroutine to fire. So we are going to get to see two cards off of R&D. There's only 9 cards in R&D left. Pardon me. One moment. There's only 9 cards left in R&D to begin with. 2 cards off R&D is a superconducting hub and an off-world office, putting them up to 5 points versus 3. They're going back in. And that's pretty wise, considering that the 2 cards you saw are now gone. We've got another token on Conduit, so we're going to see 3 new cards here. We're getting through this entire server for 6 credits. 6 credits to see 3 cards off of R&D. Definitely worth it. I would even be tempted... Oh no, lowering the strength on everything here doesn't really matter. I would assume on the next turn, the Corp is going to purge. So I would spend these Leech tokens, all of them, if it mattered. But it actually doesn't matter. Since White Space has 0 strength, Tithe only has 1. Karuna is the only card that actually matters, strength-wise. So the runner's going to end this at 1 credit, but potentially could just win the game right here if they hit a 2-pointer, and indeed they do. Steals a second copy of Off-World Office, and that is game. Kind of happened all at once there, but you see the strength of Conduit. Corp did their best to try to keep them out, and admittedly, if that first run hadn't hit 2 agendas, or if the second run hadn't hit any agendas, and the Corp purges next turn, it's a semi-decent chance that the Corp still wins this. Sometimes the luck is not in your favor. Well, that's cool. It's good to see that new people are getting into the game. I keep meaning to teach some of my other friends how to play. Alright, the new Kit Peddler, new art, I should say, versus the outfit. The outfit typically wants to move pretty fast and use a credit disparity early on in the game for a massive advantage of some kind. We come into this game at turn 6, where there are already 3 agenda points stolen by the runner and 1 scored by the Corp. The 1 scored is hostile takeover, meaning Kit already has a bad publicity to use. Kit's running server 2, which contains a Ginger Grid and a triple advance card, overclocks, hits a border control. Of course, it's being converted into a code gate, which means Ngolo is able to break that. Hits a second border control, Palangi being used to paint that into a code gate. Broken again with Ngolo. So far, all of this able to be done just with overclock money, meaning Kit has plenty of money left over, and the Corp decides to end the run using border control, but Well, I was gonna say, I don't know. Was that the right call? Hold on. Because shouldn't Kit have just run back in there, used Ngolo to convert border control into a code gate, forcing the Corp to either spend the border control again? What was preventing Kit from doing that? I understand Palongi can't be used again. But I don't think Ngolo was ever used to paint something. Yeah, I think she should have gone back in there. Because that would have either forced the border control to be used again, or the Corp could have just let her right on in. Anyway, the card in server 2 is a global food, which is scored, putting the score up to 4-3. A new piece of ice put in front of border control to help protect the Ginger Grid. However, Kit ignores it completely in Maker's eyes into R&D. Sees a Mausolus, which is of course already a code gate, able to be broken by Ngolo pretty easily. I don't want to say easily. 5 credits is kind of expensive, but gets through it for 5. Sees a Surveyor, paints that with Palongi, breaks it with Ngolo for 4 credits. Sees 3 cards. The last one is a Spin Doctor. Goes ahead and trashes that. Ignores the Ginger Grid on R&D. Just lets that stay there. Dirty Laundries into HQ. Sees the 3rd border control. And then drops their 2nd Rozeki. Revealing an archer with Ginger Grid, the Corp installs it on the outside of server 2. Reveals that they drew a Whoredom, also installs that on the as the outermost piece of ice on server 2. So we know this is an archer, we know this is a Whoredom, 4 pieces of ice on the server in total, and then Too Big to Fail allows the outfit to jump back up to 10 credits. The outfit's on a little bit of a timer because they're starting to build up all of this bad publicity. But if they use Surveyor, they might not care about bad publicity. Because as long as they can build a super server, Surveyor is going to become prohibitively expensive for Kit to break. Card is dropped into server 2 in advance once. It's suddenly APOC. Yeah, that would that would be upsetting if you were the outfit. The runner continuing to set up, maybe not feeling pressured by the card that's single advanced in server 2. Although Seamless Launch has been pretty popular lately. So potentially this could just be another global food that could be scored outright and win the game. Or some other method of fast advance, even something as simple as a Biotic Labor. Or it could just be an NGO front. Trebuchet is revealed, installed in front of R&D. The card in server 2 triple advanced, revealed to be an Atlas, so no win yet. But if the outfit runs more than 1 copy of Hostile Takeover... Oh, no, they'd have to run all 3 copies of Hostile Takeover. Looks like there's 1 in each player's score area. But I'd say that the outfit has a pretty good chance of running all 3, you would assume. So they can just pull that Hostile out of R&D and win next turn if Kit doesn't somehow steal it. It's rough chances either way though. She overclocks into server 2. But why? I don't really like this move. I think if the outfit has the hostile, they just win. So I think you would want to try to run into R&D. I don't know, it's kind of rough either way. You either get, first you have to guess where it is. It's either an R&D or HQ. So you either run into R&D for the 1 in 24 chance of winning, or preventing the corp from winning, I should say. Or if it's an HQ, you run into HQ for the 1 in 4 chance of stealing it that way. Instead, she does make it into server 2, trashes the Jinja, decides to check HQ since it's free. What are we going to see here in HQ? Oh, interesting. In order to pad out HQ, the Atlas token is spent to add Audacity into HQ. Fascinating. So hostile takeover was already in HQ, so there was a 1 in 4 chance. That was probably a nail biter for the corp when Kit ran HQ like that. Suddenly you have a 25% chance of just not being able to win the game. So they added Audacity to their hand to make that a 20% chance. The dice were rolled. Kit didn't get it. But once you find yourself in that situation, it's tough as the runner. Your chances of winning are pretty low at that point. Not the fastest game I've ever seen, but a win at turn 11. Without the need to even res very much ice. Again, the outfit tends to run pretty quickly before that bad publicity can really start sacking up against them. What is this music? I decided to try EDM tonight, but I think we're gonna have to go back to lo-fi. I just want something more calm. Okay. What do we have here? Alice Merchant versus Precision Design. Of course, Alice is going to be able to force a trash whenever she runs archives. Precision Design, interestingly, is going to be able to recur a card when they score an agenda. With an open archives and not very much ice on the table, she's probably going to be able to trigger that fairly easily. She runs HQ, hits a drafter. All those subroutines fire. I'm a little confused. Did drafter fire? Oh yeah. Subroutines were resolved. Gets into HQ, doesn't see anything. Sees a Project Ikawa, but doesn't steal it? But why? The Corp decides to ask the same thing. Apparently the answer is the runner didn't want to spend the 2 credits in the action. Runner checks R&D. Oh, okay. So the plan was just to apocalypse the whole thing. Checks R&D, nothing. Runs archives, forces the trash out of HQ. And then apocalypses. So we're looking at APOC Alice. Was that really the best apocalypse, though? I guess the problem was the drafter. But was it? I don't know. I guess drafter had fired and Alice really didn't want those. I shouldn't even say those. The single card that was installed off of drafter to remain. Problem is, though, is that Precision Design then uses Spin Doctor to immediately recur 2 of the cards out of archives, one of them being the Ikawa project. If I was a corp, I'd probably be pretty okay with that exchange. You lost a little bit of tempo, but that's 1 apocalypse down. You really didn't lose anything off of it either, as far as agenda points. However, you still have a completely blank stage, so Alice is going to take advantage of her ID ability, runs archives. The way Alice's ID ability triggers is the trash happens before the access, so she gets to see the card that was trashed. Looks like a Spin Doctor and a Violet level clearance in archives. Then she decides to click up 3 times for credits, which I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think with an open R&D and an open HQ, you could afford to maybe just jump into R&D. Potentially even HQ once. Corp decides to ice archives, but is that really going to save them? Alice decides to hedge fund, and maybe that's why she was so eager to click for those 3 credits to put her in hedge fund range. Sorry, sure gamble range. Runs R&D, doesn't see anything. No, sees a Spin Doctor. Trashes the 3rd copy of Spin Doctor, so there's no more recursion coming out of Spin Doctor. Although with Precision Design, theoretically on an agenda score, they could just add one of those Spin Doctors to hand and use it that way. A run in HQ sees an expensive 4 credit trash of a Lacosta grid. Goes back into R&D and sees a Cyberdeck Sandbox. Steals that. Overall, pretty good. Precision Design needs to ice up the centrals. But also needs to have the money to be able to res those pieces of ice. You've got 2 plays against APOC. You either just roll with it and try to score out in between the apocalypses, since the runner is also being reset and probably doesn't have their breakers, or you try to ice up the centrals so much so that they just can't afford to run all 3 centrals and play the apocalypse. Probably the first strategy is better, but it's tough against Alice because you just don't want to give her access to the centrals, period. Giving her access to archives is frustrating, and then if R&D and HQ are completely open, well, she's just going to run them just like she is now. She installs an imp, hits HQ, sees an off-world office, and trashes it. Corp says that Alice was lucky, but I disagree. She could have just ran HQ, and if she didn't access the off-world office, imped whatever the other card was, and access the off-world office on the next run. Although it does look like that was her last click, so I suppose... I guess that is a bit lucky. Shouldn't have the follow-up click. Still, though, with 2 open centrals and an imp on the table, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Potentially, those are 2 cards that are just gone. Not only that, but you're creating a situation where Alice is going to get unique accesses, because those cards that she accesses are going to be trashed, guaranteeing that she can't run into them again. Corp draws up twice and plays Violet level. Now has to choose which card they want to discard. Alice takes a credit and hits HQ. Oh my goodness. Hits another off-world office, and this is kind of looking like a game over situation for the Corp. Alice is on game point. Goes back into HQ, hits a Managarm Skunkworks, trashes that with Imp, runs back into HQ, hits the Ikawa project, can't score it, because she doesn't have the click to do so. It's looking like the game was over before it started, though. Even though the rebound on the Apocalypse early on was pretty solid, the amount of agendas that the Corp has been drawing has been just too much. Piece of Ice protects HQ, but then a Rashida is rezzed. I think that was a bit of a misplay. Rashida probably meant to be used at the beginning of the turn, but it's unlikely Alice is going to be able to get in there to use it, so Rashida will just get to fire next turn. Another Piece of Ice put in front of R&D, so the centrals are now protected, forcing Alice to actually get her breakers out if she wants to start doing something. Rashida fires. Corp is standing now, but has to somehow score 7 points and prevent Alice from scoring just even a single one. We know there's already an Ikawa project in HQ. Second piece of ice protects server 4. Are we looking to score out here? Could install the Ikawa, advance it once, and then hope for a seamless launch score on the next turn. So we're going to do. Card goes into server 4. Will it be advanced? So far, just the paperclip in the bin. It's not like Alice has a ton of money. Corp does have 14. Potentially could thwart a Apocalypse run on the Centrals, in addition to having the money to thwart a... No! We're using Seamless Launch incorrectly here. Just based on the misres on the Rashida and the use of Seamless Launch like this, I'm starting to think Corp is probably a little new. Anyway, we know they have Seamless Launch now. We know they had an Ikawa in HQ. Seems reasonable to me to assume the card in server 4 is the Ikawa. They just need to advance the card in server 4 once. Then on the next turn, they'll be able to score it out completely. Instead, they put what I have to assume is an upgrade in server 4, probably a Managarm Skunkworks, or even a Lacosta grid. If it's a Lacosta and it's res before the beginning of the Corp's next turn, theoretically, yep, there we go. Lacosta resed. Okay, so now we can still do this. So Lacosta is going to add an advancement token to the card in server 4. Seamless Launch is going to add 2 tokens to it, and then the other 2 advancement tokens can just be advanced manually. Wait, why didn't Lacosta add anything? Wait, what's going on here? What happened? Why was that advanced manually 3 times? Lacosta should have added a token to that. I think the problem is Lacosta was rezzed after the beginning of the Corp's turn. They're not quite doing their beginning of turn reses correctly here. Luminol, of course, is going to give the Corp 3 clicks to do whatever they want. In addition to the fact that they can recur a card, they decided to pull back Managarm Skunkworks. It's going to make getting into the Lacosta Grid server difficult, but I would be tempted to put that on a Central, because it's going to make future Apocalypse runs troublesome when needed. I understand, though, there's probably a good desire to want to protect the Lacosta Grid. You've already paid to res it. Theoretically, you should have already gained the advantage of getting to put a token on something for free, but that was done incorrectly. But it's kind of like a Sandstand grid. You know, you've invested in it, now you want to protect it, so the Managarm will still do some good there. But if an Apocalypse run sweeps through and trashes everything, it won't matter that you installed it over there. Just depends on where you think Alice is going to go. Now, Alice did just install a daily cast, so there's the chance that she's not planning on apocalypsing right now. So maybe that was the right call. Although here she goes. She's going into archives, potentially to trigger her ID ability. And she does have a 50 card deck, so if she runs all 3 copies of Apocalypse, it's always the chance that it's going to be more difficult for her to draw extra copies of it, simply due to that larger deck size. Runs archives and hits a Hagen. Hagen's gonna get to trash Imp. It's a good res out of HP. One thing to note, though, is that they are now down to 7 credits. It's probably not likely that they have the money to res the ice in front of R&D or HQ, but it looks like they're going to go ahead and do it. This potentially leaves the door open for Alice to go into server 4 and trash the La Costa if the Corp can't afford to res either of those pieces of ice for 4 credits. The Managarm. Managarm costs how much to res? 2? I guess the Managarm could be resed. It's probably enough to keep the runner out. Yeah. It's a Gatekeeper. Very high strength, even if you had your decoder installed, would be a pain to try to break that. Of course, you never really want to give the Corp the ability to draw 3 cards and shuffle up to 3 agendas into R&D, but that's unfortunately what has to happen. The Corp only draws 1 card and reveals an Ikawa project and shuffles that into R&D. The runner hits HQ, sees a second Gatekeeper. Corp decides to only draw 1 card. The fact that the Corp only drew 1 card off of each of those Gatekeepers, I think, makes that way worth it for Alice. Because the Corp is down to 1 credit. Both of these Gatekeepers are now down to 0 strength. You've seen all the ice, you know what you need now to get in. Heck, if Alice runs Eater, she can get in here very easily now that these Gatekeepers have lost their strength. Now the Costa Grid is going to get to put tokens on, presumably, an agenda in server 4. But the problem is there's not enough money in the Corp's bank to protect it. They seamless launch to put 2 advancement tokens on this presumed agenda, but the problem is they have no money. Now if this is a 4-2, they can click for a credit and then advance the card and score it. But if it's a 5-3, they made another error. That just kind of sitting here now. I don't know, maybe they're looking up the command to undo click. Whoa! A lot of actions all taken at once. Looks like the other 2 clicks were spent installing a card in server 5 and protecting it with a piece of ice. Corp, or rather the runner, sees that that was kind of a weird action, playing seamless launch on a card in server 4. Runner decides to go in and check that. It is the Cyberdeck sandbox, and that's going to be game. Seems like a lot of new people playing the game tonight. This is what, our third game where it seemed like someone was just learning the interface. Yeah, ultimately there weren't like huge errors going on here. The initial Apocalypse, it's not uncommon for Alice to run Apocalypse, but like that early in the game, the first Apocalypse, what was the Corp supposed to do? So that's understandable. And then they decided to ice up the Centrals, which I think made perfect sense. It is unfortunate that these were gatekeepers and they become significantly weaker after they're rezzed, but I think icing the Centrals still was, in general, the right thing to do. Prioritize icing archives. Oh, hey, Simply the Onion. Oh, this is no tournament. It'd be pretty cool to do a tournament one day, but nope, this is just random games on JNet. Yeah, Alderaan, credit management is at the heart of the game for sure. I think the real thing that killed Precision Design was just the fact that they lost all those agendas early. I think if they hadn't bled agendas early on, they potentially could have kept this going for a little while. But that, in combination with some of the more amateur moves, ended up costing them the game. Alright, Reina Roja versus Precision Design. So Reina's already used a Gachapon and pitched Jailbreak and Tread Lightly. Tread Lightly makes a certain level of synergistic sense between Reina's ID ability and Tread Lightly's effect. Moving pretty quickly here. A card in server 1 is advanced and protected with a piece of ice. Reina goes into HQ and trashes a Managarm Skunkworks. Card in server 1 is double advanced. We already have a Cyberdeck sandbox scored by the Corp, putting them up to 2 points. Seamless launch. Going to be used to score Off-World Office out of server 1. We have a Corp that is moving like lightning. Replaces the scored Off-World Office with another card in that server. Still just completely leaving the centrals open. Reina is trying to get set up, and she's got the pieces of a setup here, but if the Corp just scores out before she can do anything, it's not going to matter. Reina relies on putting a chokehold on the Corp when the Corp reses ice, but if the Corp is never resing ice, then Reina's whole strategy just kind of falls apart. If the Corp never has to res ice. Turns out the card, though, in server 1 is just a Maryland campaign, protected by an upgrade, presumably either a Managarm or what's another popular upgrade. I feel like out of HB these days, it could be an Anoetic Void. Managarm Skunkwork and Anoetic Void was popular there for a bit. Taking advantage of the completely free servers, Reina runs into HQ. Does trigger DreamNet. If she can get another link, she'll also get a credit out of DreamNet. Drops a Fermenter, which is boosted by Cookbook. I wonder if that also means that Reina is... Well, I would have to assume Reina's also running Tranquilizer if she's running Cookbook. Anyway, the Corp overwrites their Maryland campaign out of server 1, but not before rezzing a Tranquility home grid. Puts another piece of ice in front of that server. I think that's indicative that this card is probably an agenda. 19 credits to Precision Design's name. Central's still completely wide open, but I don't think they care. Reyna hits R&D but doesn't see anything good. Installs a Xanadu and an Earthrise. I think the Xanadu is a little ambitious right now. And indeed, the card in server 1 was yet another Cyberdex, and sort of what's so vicious about Precision Design is this recursion of Seamless Launch. Every time Seamless Launch is used to score an agenda, Precision Design just puts it back into their hand. Reyna is trying to be aggressive here, installs Docklands Pass and Carnivore, giving them a double access on the first run on HQ, in addition to the option of trashing any card she accesses by trashing 2 cards from her grip. But in spite of the 2 runs on HQ, doesn't really see anything. Does trash an Eli, though, by pitching 2 cards from her hand. Decides to run R&D, steals a Luminal Transubstantiation, small victory, Simulchips and drops an Utai. Now what is this card here in server 1? It's not being interacted with. If it was an agenda, you assume the Corp would just advance it and win. Corp draws up twice and protects R&D, wants to stop Reyna from getting free accesses. Now Rototurret, the first ice of the game, is res, but the Corp has plenty of money that even though the res cost is increased by 2 between Xanadu and Reyna's ID, it's not a big deal for them to pay the 6 credits to res this. In fact, it's going to hurt Reyna quite a bit. This is going to trash a program. Now luckily Utai has a pretty low install cost at 2, and she triggers Simulchip to reinstall Utai after that trash. But of course that's just going to slow her down. It's going to lose her money and lose her the potential recursion of something more useful. Corp drops a card into server 1 and advances it once, gaining what looks like 2 credits from Tranquility home grid. Botulus enters play on the outermost piece of ice on the server. Reyna is going to go in here more than likely and check this advanced card. She sort of has to at this point. Now because of Cookbook, Botulus should get an extra token here. It does. She runs, sees the drafter. Botulus is going to be able to take care of that. Now what's the second piece of ice? If it's a barrier, she's kind of doomed. Indeed, it is a Hagen. She has no way of breaking that. Oh my goodness. And the extra card in server 1 is an Enoetic Void. So chances of Reyna even getting in here after somehow passing Hagen are pretty low. Yeah, I agree, Onion. I really liked it when I saw it first printed. I thought it seemed like a really fun ID, but it's super strong. That recursion seems so innocent. It's just like, oh yeah, you know, add a card back to HQ. It's not a big deal. I think the problem is that we don't really get to see very much creativity in what's added back into HQ. It's almost always the fast advance that was used to score the agenda in the first place. I wonder if instead it said you may add one card from archives into HQ that was not played this turn, although that kind of gets complicated. Yeah, no, you're right. Technically, it's never advancing since it's seamless launch. But in general, seamless launch is pretty good. Theoretically, even in a world where Precision Design in this exact situation wasn't able to score that last agenda, they can just purge viruses to get rid of Botulus, to get rid of Fermenter, and make 8 credits while doing it. But oh well. I don't know. I wonder if it said that you can recur cards that are face down, but no face up cards. I don't know if that would fix it. Have you tried Heinzel? Willis Heinzel. Oh no, what's Netscape? I'm afraid I kind of live under a rock. I just love Netrunner, but I don't keep up with any of the tournament scenes. Oh my goodness, it's Adam. I'm so happy. I love Adam decks. Alright, so it's Adam versus Built to Last. We already see a wall-to-wall res, which is going to gain Wayland some pretty good forward momentum. However, Adam is already at 15 credits, largely due to liberated accounts, in addition to having a Logic Bomb. Logic Bomb is an extremely powerful card. I think it really pushed Adam from being kind of almost a joke runner. He's my favorite runner, but I'll admit, you know, he was tough to make work. The Logic Bomb really started pushing him more towards a competitive runner. Really big store championship. Heinzel won the tournament with a Precision Design list. The agenda suite? Which one specifically in the agendas? Adam goes into HQ, which is definitely the place he wants to be, seeing as how Neutralize All Threats is going to give him the double access. However, Pharos is res, pretty strong piece of ice. However, it doesn't have that third advancement token on it, so it's still just down to 4 strength. Adam installs Paperclip. Actually, had previously installed Paperclip. By trashing Brainchip and Black Orchestra with Emergent Creativity, is able to get into HQ, sees Above the Law, and Wall-to-Wall. Neutralize All Threats forces him to trash Wall-to-Wall, bringing him down to 7 credits. Find the Truth, however, has revealed a card on R&D, and Adam wants it. So he runs R&D, Mausolus res. Now he can just crash through this. But he can also install the Black Orchestra he pitched with Emergent Creativity. Looks like he missed the trigger, so he's going to redo this. But Black Orchestra is going to cost 6 credits to break. I don't think he can do this. I think he just has to let Mausolus fire. Or he could Logic Bomb it. Oh, that's a good point, Onion. Back when it was just Cyberdeck's Sandbox, it was kind of one of the... Well, it wasn't the only credit-neutral agenda, but the other credit-neutral agenda that I can think of was Bologna, which was in NBN. And then... I'm trying to think of any other credit-neutral ones. I guess there was the one that paid out 10 credits over the course of 5 rounds, or technically 10 turns, but like 5 instances of each player getting a turn. Yeah, I was a little surprised when they reintroduced Global Food Initiative back into the rotation. I liked it back when it had just came out, and I think it was fun, but I was happy to see it go. And then when it came back, I was like, eh. But yeah, I think you bring up a good point. The fact is that Cyberdeck Sandbox, coupled with Offworld Office, coupled with Luminol, all of those are essentially credit-neutral scores. So they're just getting their win condition without actually losing any tempo. Oh, a big ban list in June? Yeah, I know a lot of people have been upset about, in general, how much money the Corp has had lately. Not even just from the credit-neutral agendas, although, again, I think you've definitely got a good point there. But I know that between Hansei review and government subsidy, I think, didn't they get rid of one of the clearances? Corps had access to a lot of kind of instant money cards. Credit positive, yeah, because Seamless is a single credit for 2 advancements. It's pretty good. It's almost in a very small economy card in its own right. Oh, I missed some action here. So it looks like Adam was able to grab 2 agendas. One of them the unique Wayland agenda, and the other a Project Atlas. They've got their brain chip installed. Adam is in a very commanding position here. Getting that first agenda is pretty critical for Adam so that his brain chip can put him back up to normal hand size. After that, every other agenda is just icing on the cake, making it that much easier to trigger your free card draw. Now, the Corp is able to score a hostile takeover, but they're not the outfit or anything, so the bad publicity theoretically could start stacking up in Adam's favor over the course of the game, especially because it's the first agenda scored. A toxic agenda suite. You're not wrong. I don't know why the phrase makes me laugh when I hear it. Overclock used to get into HQ. Paquette shown. But there aren't 3 advancement tokens on it, so that can be broken with Paperclip. In spite of the fact that Pharos has the 3 tokens on it, Adam is able to spend overclock money and 6 real money to still just break through that. They've still held on to this logic bomb, which is great for them. Unless Wayland pulls out some kind of fancy trick, it's going to be difficult for them to stifle the snowball effect that Adam tends to have on games. Naked card installed in server 3, advanced once. A new piece of ice protecting wall to wall. Dirty Laundry played on archives, more than likely to not only just get the money, but also trigger Find the Truth. It is an Paquette, but with a single advancement token on it, it can be broken through with Paperclip for 2 credits. Wildcat Strike. Haven't seen an Adam deck use Wildcat, although at a single influence that makes a lot of sense. Adam tends to suffer a lot when it comes to influence costs, so anything that is a single influence is very welcome when deck building. Third piece of ice protects R&D, advanced once, and mass commercialization, allowing the Corp to jump up to a whopping 21 credits. Suddenly they're able to threaten all the res on these pieces of ice. However, Adam's still scoping out R&D by dirty laundering into archives using Find the Truth. Doesn't really lose money on this. Not that he's necessarily strapped for money either at 21 credits. There is a scenario where Wayland builds up enough ice and is able to res it all to the point where Adam kind of starts losing steam. Whatever card Adam saw on R&D, he wants it. Takes the run, but sees a Colossus. Is going to need a killer for that one. Does not have a killer in the bin, so I think Colossus just gets to fire. Unless he wants to use his Logic Bomb on this. But a non-triple advanced Atlas is tough. But given the present board state, trashing a program isn't the end of the world. You can recur the paperclip if it's trashed, so the Corp decides to trash the Rizeki. Adam, of course, has a tag. He'll need to shake that later. Second piece of ice is another Aket. However, because it does have the 3 advancement tokens on it, it gains 3 strength. Only one of the subs can be broken. More than likely, it will be the second sub if the ice is contested. I don't know why you wouldn't. At this point, you've invested getting hit by Colossus, you might as well keep going. Paperclip breaks it for 4. Advancement token is placed on the Aket protecting archives. Last, we have the Mausolus, which needs to be either broken with Black Orchestra or just crashed into. Indeed, Mausolus is crashed into. Crisium Grid, rezzed. I'm not sure 100% why. There are no triggers that I'm aware of on that run that was successful. Why not res? Well, you wouldn't want to res it because it costs you 3 credits to res. I think that's mostly why. Like, if you don't need to res it, you might as well not. Plus, Adam has to trash the first card he accesses. Yeah, that's true. Potentially a Mutual Favor install. We haven't seen Mutual Favor in the bin, though. I'm a little confused why Adam didn't have to trash that. Did he... Oh, accessing the cards and archives must have counted as accessing a card with a trash cost. So when he accessed the Crisium Grid... Yeah, Crisium Grid, an unresed Crisium Grid is extremely frustrating for Adam because if he hasn't triggered his Neutralize All Threats text, he has to just pay 5 credits and trash it, even if it's not a threat to him. Anyway, Wall to Wall in Server 1 is overwritten. A third piece of ice put in the server to protect it. Adam's sitting with 9 cards in hand. Falsifying credentials, guesses, asset, sees an asset. Now, theoretically, he could jump in here and trash this NGO front, but that would really not gain him anything. The Corp is already at 28 credits. If, for example, we were in a scenario where the Corp had very little money, it probably would be worth it to run this server, trash the NGO front before it could be advanced. But the Corp doesn't need money now. That NGO was put in there as a bait. Thanks to falsified credentials, Adam was able to see that coming. Decides he wants to take a peek at the card on top of R&D, so he runs archives, pays 4 credits to break in there, but you gotta remember, one of those is coming from the bad publicity. Career fairs a daily cast out, just for that extra money. 1 logic bomb in the bin, 1 installed, a 3rd one presumably floating around somewhere. Card and server 1 double advanced. Of course we know it's an NGO front, so the corp is just getting money at this point. I'm not 100% certain why. I don't know if they really needed it. Maybe they do. Maybe I'm missing something. Wait, the runner checked server 3? Did I read that wrong? I thought they checked server 1 with falsified credentials. Oh my goodness, they did. You're absolutely right. They checked server 3. I thought for sure, I didn't even read which server they checked, because I thought for sure you would falsified credentials server 1. No, you're absolutely right. We don't even know what this card in server 1 is. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe the runner thought they checked server 1. Anyway, the card in server 1 is double advanced, which means potentially it is an agenda. I think if I were to explain why Adam used it on server 3, it's because he wanted to use falsified credentials strictly for the money. Perhaps he wants to completely ignore this server and focus entirely on R&D, and this makes a certain level of sense because all he needs is 1 more agenda to win, 1 more 2-pointer to win. And it's why he keeps running archives here. It's why he keeps checking R&D by using Find the Truth. Because he just needs enough money, he just needs enough logic bombs, that when he sees a 2-pointer on the top of R&D, that he can just get in here. He doesn't need all the money in the world. And yeah, Onion, you were right. It was an Atlas in server 1. Which is a little funny because if Adam had gone in there and was able to steal it, he would have won the game. Presumably, though, the ice here, he's afraid of it. He does only have the 1 breaker installed. It's kind of like going against the evil that you know versus the evil that you don't know. He knows what ice are protecting this server. He knows he can get through it. He doesn't know what's protecting this and couldn't 100% confirm that that was an Atlas. So if he ran in here and spent a bunch of resources to do it, and it wasn't the game-winning agenda, he would be in a bad spot. I think he's taking the safer route. By constantly running this Aket. Because even though he's not accessing the card in R&D, it's like getting an access on R&D. Since he sees what it is and knows whether he needs to go in there and get it or not. Oh, you're saying, why didn't Wayland over-advance the Project Atlas? That's a good point. I don't know. If I had to guess, I would say it's probably because he didn't think about it. I mean, I didn't think about it. You're absolutely right, though. A Project Atlas would have completely thwarted Adam's Find the Truth plan. Too little, too late, though. Adam overclocks into R&D, and presumably this is the game-winning agenda. Wormhole is rezzed not using the full discount. I think. Yeah, 6 credits to res the wormhole. Anyway, all of this is either broken or bypassed. It looks like Mayfly is doing the lion's share of the work on this. The Mausolus, the last piece of ice, is bypassed using Logic Bomb. And the last Atlas is stolen for the win. Oh yeah, a Spin Doctor would have done it too. Basically anything that shuffles R&D at instant speed would have thrown all of this off. I'll be honest, if I was the Corp, I wouldn't have thought to shuffle R&D against Adam. It's been a while since Jackson Howard was in the game. I'd completely forgotten that that's a big way that people messed with Adam's Find the Truth. Yeah, that's also true, since Spin Doctor draws the card on res now, instead of Jackson Howard needing to be clicked to draw cards. This is some good insight. Onion, you need to play in a tournament, man. You seem like the kind of player who is good at thinking all these things on the fly. Yeah, overall, it looks like Adam was able to pull out the win. Arguably, the Corp could have prevented this, but was not able to do so. Adam got a lot of momentum early on, which is very important for him, since it's what fuels his brain chip. 10th in an SK tournament. Well, congratulations. But I think that's gonna do it for me. It is very late here. But as always, any of you who've stuck through it, Onion, Alderane, and anyone else watching, I appreciate it. Didn't make top 8. Maybe next time. I'm amazed you even played. I get extremely stressed out anytime I play competitively, so I tend to avoid it. But thank you. At any rate, as always, thanks guys for watching. I'll catch you later maybe, or otherwise, just have a good day.